Well, I just want to say thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to spend some time with us. Today, Aaron is going to give us a presentation on using Find My Font, which does pretty much what it implies right there, helps you identify which different fonts you may have in any images so that you're able to match fonts really easily. And Aaron will give you the 15-20 minutes presentation on how to use that, all the ins and outs, and then we'll open it up for some questions and answers. So if you do have any, either about Find My Font or just other things you've been wondering about Flexi, Aaron's the man to ask. He is in charge of all our training here at SAI and knows Flexi inside and out. And so you can ask him any questions that you have in the chat window there. And we will be recording today's webinar. So if you have to leave partway through or you want to review it or share it with someone else, we will be posting it on our YouTube channel, and we'll send you all a link to the video afterwards. And we have a couple people can't hear, so I'll type a few things in the chat window there to help them, but I'll turn it over to Aaron.
All right, sounds good. So what we want to first do is take a look at where you're going to find my font. So first thing is this piece of software is for those who are using a subscription. And let me actually pull up the correct version of Flexi here, but we'll show it to you in the cloud here. But if you have a Flexi subscription or a Flexi DieSub subscription, these will both, this tool will show up in your cloud window if you have a subscription. So let's pull that up here. And I'm going to drag this over. There we go. Windows is giving me a little bit of trouble, but that's okay. There we go. So now we've got our cloud window on the right-hand side here, and you're going to see under Resources the Download Find My Font. You're going to click on this link, and you'll go through an installation process that you can go to install it, and then you will get a separate icon on your desktop that shows Find My Font. We actually have a YouTube video online about how to use Find My Font already. So, and that video actually is a little bit longer, but it also includes some instructions on how to download and how to install. So if you're interested in finding more information about how to install it, kind of a walkthrough step-by-step process, check out that video on our YouTube channel. It'll be really helpful for you. So once it's installed, we can minimize Flexi. We just open the program up and you are greeted with this screen right here. On the right-hand side, you're going to see a Getting Started. This Getting Started window is going to pop up every time unless you tell it not to. This is just a quick resources. It kind of gives you some introductory steps on how to get started. And then again, more resources. The nice thing is about Find My Font is has a ton of resources on how to use it. There are some guidelines, step-to-step tutorials, demo videos, and things like that if you want to check that out over here. Really helpful tool. For now, we're going to close that, and we're just going to kind of start with some of the basic stuff here. One of the things to remember is this is for Flexi 19 subscription customers. So I see a couple comments flying by asking, you know, if 12, you have to be on a subscription of 19 in order to get this. You do get one free license. If you do decide to purchase another sets of licenses, you can do that through Find My Font separately. We're partnering with them, so if that was something you're interested in. But let's get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to open a file. So I'm going to open up. There's two ways that we can do this. We can either open up an existing image by clicking the open button, or I can take a screenshot. Let's say you have something in an email or something on screen that you just want to capture. You can just capture that image. So let's say it's a font in a menu item or something like that. This is where the take the screenshot will be kind of helpful. because you may not always have a JPEG of the font that you're trying to look for. For now, though, we're just going to hit the open button here, and we'll just open up one of our sample files here. Let's grab this one here because this one has some good instances where we can do multiple different things. So you can kind of see this file, and it doesn't look, it's okay. It's a flat-on picture, but we can tell that it's kind of blurry. It's not great, but in this case, it doesn't really matter. We're going to be able to solve some of that. So I'm going to zoom in here, and let's just say we want to take a snapshot of this craft shop font. I'm going to zoom in here just using my scroll wheel, or you can use the zoom in tool right here in order to get closer. And all I have to do is click on the letter selection tool, which by default, that is the tool that is selected. When I click anywhere on screen, so for example, like this letter here, it automatically detects the edges and puts that letter down here. Now this does work on a contrast style basis. So it's looking at the contrast between the color of the letter and the color of the background, and that's how it tells where the letter is. So if you have something that's extremely close in color, you might need to make some adjustments to your tolerance up here in order to correct some of that. So if we pull this down just a little bit and click on here again, you can kind of see how the red outline has gotten a little bit choppier. Again, this may depend on what kind of circumstance you're running into. If you're running into a lot of bleeding where it's selecting a ton of stuff that you don't want it to select, you would back off the tolerance. But in this case, I could actually use more tolerance because we have a pretty clear background to color ratio here. So I could pull this up a little higher. Let's just say we go 3/4, delete that, reapply it, and now you can see it's actually pulled in a way better simulation of that letter. The nice thing about this is if I want to find this particular font, I don't have to click all the letters. I can just pick out a few highlight letters and it will find out most of the stuff for me. So for example, I'm going to probably pick the R because that has kind of a unique little tilde or a little flair to it here. I'm also going to pick the F, and I'm going to also go with the T. Now, something interesting that has happened here is the T and the S have gotten joined together. We don't ever want to do this. So we want to make sure that the connecting pieces, the serifs and whatnot, they all kind of are separate, and we want to make sure each letter is separate from each other. So we can simply X out of this one and get rid of it. So to fix that, I can zoom in here, and I'm going to use my little letter splitter tool. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to simply draw a line right here to divide those two letters. I'm going to zoom back out again, grab my letter selection tool, and now I can click on the T and the S separately, and it splits them apart. So just remember that if anytime you're doing this, make sure that you always get individual letters. So that's way more than enough. Honestly, I think I could probably just grab like 2 or 3 letters and it would do a sufficient job for me. And I'm going to move on to my next step, which is step number 2. So I'm going to type in the letters in their case that they come in out on the screen here. So I'm going to hit C, R, F, T, S. And I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to do a search, and it's going to search 2 places. It's going to first search my local hard drive, and then it's also going to do a search over the internet. The fonts that show up in pink, those are going to be the ones that it found on the internet that are extremely close to this letter. And then the ones in green are going to be the ones that are in my already loaded system fonts. So we can see that the closest we can get to this particular font is this one here that's on my computer already. If I want to match it exactly, we're probably looking at this one up here. And if we take a look at this, We can kind of see some different variations here that are pretty close, but this one here seems to be the closest. If I want to purchase this font, so in this case, I don't have this font because it's in my pink list, I can right click and I can say view this font online. And it's going to load up a page where I can play around with a little bit so I can make a test. And it'll spell out some words for you so you can look at the spacing. I can also look at the full character set and see what else is in that character set to kind of compare the rest of the letters. And then the last thing I can do is I can take a look at the font name, and then here's a few selected resources where I can purchase that font if I wanted to purchase it individually. Now I know a lot of shops probably have big font packs, so a lot of these fonts would probably already have them, and so you might have a lot of these already in your font library. But here's a place where if you needed to purchase that font, you could. So let's go back and let's try something a little bit different. Let's get a little more complicated with it. So I'm going to open up a different file, and the power of this tool is that you can also do images like this where the text is not always straight. So I'm going to grab my ABC or my alignment tool here, the baseline rotation tool. Click on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool to straighten out each letter individually. So I'm going to zoom in here and grab this font. And I'm going to try and make this, set it so it's kind of straight here, kind of line it up, get it as straight as possible. And when I do that, it resets the image rotation so that that M is there. And now I can just click on my selection tool, click on the M, and then I can do this a couple different times for different letters. Maybe I'll do it for the A over here. Again, we're not looking to, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we want to make it as straight as we can using these lines. And then we'll just add the A, and then maybe we'll add the N over here. So we'll do the, again, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but we're just trying to get it as straight as we can. Okay, and then we will go ahead and just type that in. So M N, and we will do a search. And it's found an exact match. Obviously, this is an easy one, but the idea here is that if I try to and grab these letters on a rotation as they're rotated like this at an angle, it's not gonna read them properly because of the way the computer algorithm is looking at the font. It's looking at rotation and all that kind of stuff to make sure that it grabs the right font. So we do want to make sure and put them in a way so that they're straight. So those are pretty easy examples. The other powerful tool it has a deskewing tool. So we're going to look at another sample here in the perspective view. So here's a sign that has been taken. Obviously, there's no real way that you could ever get this picture straight on because you could never get level with it very well. So we have these letters here, and if we try and just add the letters as is, you can see that this is not really going to work out very well. If we try to find this font, it's not going to find the right font. So I'm going to clear all this off. We need to fix the deskew first. And that's where the guys at Find My Font have really worked on a great algorithm to get this straight. So I'm going to click on my deskewing tool, and I get this little box here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down my Shift key and start dragging these little points down to as close as I can. So I'm gonna, be reasonable here, but kind of get these somewhat straight and get these kind of close in so that we're following the shape of the sign here. We probably want to get these, scooch it over just a little bit, get this guy up here. Again, I'm holding down the Shift key while I do this. Grab this, maybe pull it in a little bit. All right, so I think that's fairly agreeable there. So now we get a preview, and it kind of seems a little small with this monitor that I'm using here, but we get a little preview of what's going on here. I can increase contrast if I need to, if I feel like the color contrast is not great enough. In this case, I think we're pretty good. We don't need to increase the contrast at all. We're going to leave it at the base width for now. If in the deskewing process, it looks like it might have squished the letters or something like that, we can increase that like this and stretch it out a little bit if we need to. With this one, it seems like it's done an okay job. I'll leave it at 100% for now. And the option I'm going to click here next is the fixed perspective. If I click on this option, what it does is it applies a perspective fixing algorithm to make sure that the letters are at least somewhat straight. So I'm going to click fixed perspective. I can turn off the grid if I want to kind of get a better view of what's going on. So you can kind of see here that if we look at it now, it looks like everything's kind of squashed over here. By clicking that option there, that's going to pull that in. The reason why you may not want that option might be as if you don't have quite as big of a skew to do, you may want to, or if you're having to do several unskewings at the, you do this multiple times to get it correct, you may not want to fix this perspective every time. So you may want to get it all straight first, and then do on the last one, then do the fixed perspective. So that looks okay to me. I'm going to hit this green check mark, and now it's going to give you the before and after. And over here, the letters are a little bit blurry, yes, but that's going to be fine because the software is smart enough to kind of figure that out. I'm going to grab my letter selection tool. I'm going to collect one of the N's because that's probably the clearest one. I'm going to grab the R, and then this S is a pretty distinctive letter inside that font set, so I'm going to grab that one too. And that's really all I need. So NRS in caps, match fonts, and it's going to search my local hard drive and then the internet. I really don't have anything similar to this on my PC, but we can see that it's pulled up pretty accurate representation here. So it looks like we got several different versions here of the same font. It's even pulled up some that have some funny effects to them, but this one is probably the closest. So then I can grab that font and buy it if I want to, or grab it from my font library. So that's Find My Font in a nutshell. We can do all kinds of different fonts. I didn't grab a font, but those fonts that have kind of crazy effects to them? You can also do those too. I've done fonts with there was an example I had a while ago that I was using with a customer, showing him how to use it. He had like a zombie font where it was kind of like dripping. The fonts were like dripping. It was also able to pull in that font as well. So it can do almost anything. So crazy warped fonts and that kind of stuff, as long as it has a font set, it should be able to find it. And that's the kind of the power of this tool. I am not a font expert by any means. And so a tool like this for me makes a big difference. I have friends that can name off fonts like crazy, but that's what they do for a living. They do scripting and they do all that kind of stuff. But this brings that into a much more manageable type situation for somebody who doesn't want to spend the time to memorize tons of fonts. And you may have thousands of fonts in your font library, and digging through fonts like that can be a headache. So you can have all your fonts, and this is an easy way to just grab that, throw an image in there, click a couple buttons, and now you've got a font. And at least you can get somewhere close to what, pretty accurate in terms of what that font might be. There is a couple questions here. There is a match fonts button. You can either hit the enter button. So when I click over here in my text to match and I hit the enter key, it'll automatically press that button over here in the match fonts area here. But if you want to click it manually, it's that click button there. And then you can see this, the search. If you want to, if you already know that you really don't have that font, you can actually go over here and uncheck the local search, and it'll turn off your local search for you. And you can just have it only check online. So if you already know you don't have it, you can uncheck this option and it'll only do an online search.
Okay.
So that is Find My Font. There's a few other things that you can kind of do here, but mainly just working with any JPEG image you want to import, this will work with. Any screenshot that you take, it'll take a huge array of files. It also does not have to be super great. Just like we looked at this image here, this image is not great. I mean, if you zoom in, you can see how blurry and nasty this is. This is not a great file, but it was able to pull that in fairly successfully. And as long as you play around with your tolerance settings a little bit, you can kind of get that fine-tuned. And then using those tools to deskew and all that should give you a pretty good result. Any questions that we have about this or anything about Flexi?
All right, so it looks like we have a couple people asking just about how to launch the program.
Okay, so that's a good one. So once you install the software, you can't see it right now, but let me drag the icon over. On your desktop, when you install it, you're going to see an icon that looks just like this. It's going to say Find My Font SAI Edition. It's a little an F inside of a magnifying glass. So when you install the software, after you find it in your cloud window, so you start here. You will log in using your SAI cloud account login information. So if you already have that, it's going to use that existing information. It's not going to be a different or a new one. That's where you're going to find the download. Once you download and install it, that's where you get this little icon on the desktop. And then you can tag that down here, down to your taskbar, or you can put it wherever you like.
Okay. And then Sheila was wondering how you do screenshots to get the fonts, the pictures.
You can do a screenshot right within the software here. If I click take a screenshot, I get a screenshot here. This is my desktop, kind of messy, but you can do it that way, or this basically takes a screenshot of your main monitor. What I would probably just do is you can there's a keyboard shortcut for it. I think it's print screen that will save a on your there's a print screen on your keyboard that should get you a screenshot and it saves it by default. Or another really good place is honestly, you can probably see this down here in my taskbar. I have the snipping tool already like tagged to my taskbar down here. So I just use this. This is super easy because then I can just create a new and drag right where I want it to be. And then I can use tools to mark up and draw and all kinds of stuff, and then I can just save it. The nice thing also about the snipping tool, again, this is just a Windows utility, so it's nothing fantastic, but I can also set a delay on something. So let's pull up Flexi DyeSub for a second here. Let's say that I want to take a picture of this menu and I want that font, whatever that is. right? So I can pull up this and just say delay 5 seconds. Then I can click here, click on the menu bar and hold it open.
You need to
And
click
after,
new first.
oh, did I have to click? Did I miss that part? Oh, there we go. Okay. Delay 5 seconds, new. I can click open my menu and here in a second, it should pop up. There it goes. I can take a screenshot of that menu now that it's open, and then I could use that. I could file, save as, we'll just say capture on the desktop. I can open that file. And then I could do a find my font on that. So honestly, if you no special software, I just like the snipping tool because it's easy to use and it allows me to do stuff like that. So and I can take more control of what I'm snipping on a screen, especially if you want to get real close in on something. That's the easiest way for me.
Okay. And then let's see, we had another question. It said, will Find My Font be available to other Flexi users who do not have Flexi 19? So Find My Font is a separate program, separate from Flexi. It is available for purchase individually. You can purchase it from Find My Font at findmyfont.com. And so what SAI has done has an agreement with Find My Font where we're able to provide one free license to all our Flexi subscribers. So you can purchase it separately, but if you do have a Flexi subscription, then that is included with your Flexi subscription.
Correct.
And then we had a question from Liz. She said, I wasn't here yet when you showed what the scissors are for.
The scissors, yeah, perfect. That's what it's for is for splitting up apart letters where you think or where it's causing a joining to happen. Let me pull up the sample files again here. So we had, in this example, we had it right here where the S and the T, because we had our tolerance set fairly high, the S and the T were getting connected. And so I can draw a line. If I zoom in here, I can draw a line, and that says every time I click on this T, it's not going to select the S. It breaks it off right there. And so now I can select these letters individually. Whereas if I don't have that, it tries to connect the two together, which in this program you want them separate. You want each character to be separate.
Okay. Then we had another question that was kind of the opposite. What if a font is broken into parts? Example, an S with a top half and bottom half. It's like there's a space between the parts of the letter. How do you make it identify it as like one letter?
Yeah, that's actually a good question.
What does it do with the I? Like up there in Marie Stewart.
Yeah. So typically, what I would do in those cases is if the letter is split apart, I don't know that there's a way to join them together necessarily. But what I would do in this case is I would just avoid the I to get all together in this example. So if I was trying to get this part of this font up here, the I is typically not a super distinctive letter in terms of a font set. You typically would, in this case, I would probably try and pick the M, the R, maybe the S, the W, or something like that, and skip the I because most fonts the I's are fairly simple. So if you get another letter, that would probably work just fine. In terms of joining a font, I've never joined two like a split font apart like that. Um,
Okay, hey, we have a couple people in the comments saying that if you hold down the Shift key
oh,
and then
you're
click
right.
the object, then it adds all
Yes,
as one item.
you're right. I
Thank
was
you,
just about to try
everyone.
that. Yep. Hadn't actually done that before, but yeah, I was just thinking, actually, what happens when I hit shift? So that's what happens. So
There you
you're
go.
right. That would be the way to do
And
it.
thank you for everyone in the comments for mentioning that.
There you go. So that'll put it
Perfect.
together.
Okay, and then I have another question from Paula. She said, how do I get it to check all the fonts on my computer? It's only grabbing and looking at 500 fonts.
So it
Because
checks
some
by
people have a lot of
default.
fonts.
Yeah. So that by default it checks all the fonts inside of the local system fonts folder. You can add a font set by going to the fonts menu and click Control F, and then you can add a font set in here. So if you have multiple font sets in different locations, you could add a font set there. You also have under the Preferences menu, oh, this is a range indication, but that's probably where you'd want to go is fonts, font setup, and then you can add or delete a font set. So you'd probably pick a folder. So you can see here that the default folder path is on the C drive, Windows, fonts. That's where it grabs its default folders or fonts from. And then you can just add additional font sets and then just tell it where that font set is located.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Tabitha asked, are any font downloads included with the subscription of Flexi 19?
Just mainly the only fonts that Flexi really comes with are the system fonts that it uses for the operation of the menus and stuff like that. Flexi used to come with one, but nowadays it's so cheap to buy thousands of fonts that Flexi doesn't really come with any pre-installed these days. It uses the fonts that are inside of your uh, Windows fonts folder, and so you would just add fonts to that. The only fonts that we do have that are separate from, say, your Windows fonts folders or stuff that you would buy online were are going to be if you had files with the old Casmate fonts. We do have a download link for the old Casmate fonts. If you used those in the past, there's a special way to install those. Um, but I would have you contact our technical support team and they can get you the link and then some instructions on how to install those. But again, those are really archaic fonts. I would only use those if you had specific files that you needed to open that used to use those fonts. But for the most part, you can purchase large packs of fonts online for fairly cheap.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Everyone, do we have any other questions today? All right. Well, thank you all for attending. I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. Our next webinar will be, let me double check here. It'll be on March 10th, and we'll be talking about the new Sidekick tool that we'll be offering for Flexi. So we'll send out an email to everyone with a link to register for that webinar for March 10th. And as always, we will be posting today's recording on our YouTube channel. And let me post the link here for you. We do have a lot of other webinars and other videos, like Aaron had mentioned, one about downloading Find My Font, going through all those details. And you can access them there at our YouTube channel. And we'll be sending out a link to the recording today as soon as we get that uploaded. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Have a good one.